It is 1st and 10, and they take over in Chiefs territory at the 46-yard line. They go with a double tight end. They go with a pistol formation. Hurts in the gun. Trailed by Barkley. Hurts back, looking. He is going deep, and it is caught. Touchdown!
The Slim Reaper.
Devontae Smith. 46 yards.
The Slim Reaper. So you got a sudden change. You force them to turn it over on downs.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's over. The Philadelphia Eagles have won Super Bowl 59. They have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22. It's their second Super Bowl win in 7 years. What a game. What a season. What a team. The greatest Eagles team in modern history. Eagles fans, savor it and rejoice.
Hey y'all, today of course it's Matt Rogers with the Honorable Mention Podcast. We've been doing this surprisingly for about 5 years now. It's been a little while though. The last time we had a show, one of the voices you heard in addition to mine was OJ and Chris Franklin. We have OJ on today to talk about a wide variety of things. OJ has of course been doing this a lot longer than 5 years. OJ, how's it going? And how is the city feeling about the Sixers and the Phillies right now? Is there any buzz in the city?
Well, as far as the Sixers is concerned, that's probably non-existent. I guess there's a little bit of a win because they moved up to the number 3 pick as opposed to staying put at 6 thanks to the lottery. But people saying, "Oh yeah, it's not Cooper Flag." So, and I kind of feel sorry for whoever the 3rd pick is going to be, whether it's assumed that it's Ace Bailey or someone else. It's like, okay, whoever that pick turns out to be, it has to be okay. He is following Cooper Flag, even though there's a 2nd pick involved too,
Right.
right? But hopefully, whoever that may be, he'll be given a chance. But Sixers have problems beyond that, so to even hold your weight or hold the weight of the franchise on the 3rd pick in a draft where you don't even know if Embiid is coming back. That's kind of misguided in my thoughts. Phillies are doing well. I think people have calmed down over going berserk in April when they were kind of like fluctuating around 500 and all. And you always have to remember that baseball is a sprint, not a marathon. Looks like
A marathon, not a sprint, right?
Yeah, a marathon, not a sprint. I'm sorry. So, they're starting to hit a little more consistently. The bullpen is coming around, and you know what you're going to get with your starting pitching, short of Aaron Nola, who's now on the injured list. But I think they'll be okay. But again, it still just boils down to what they're going to do in October. But just overall, I just think the city is still on a major, major high with the Super Bowl, and rightfully so.
Absolutely. Just picking up right there, I think when we were talking about that in the week leading up, I felt pretty good. I felt like the Eagles were going to win. Definitely felt more confident than the last time after beat the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl when the Chiefs beat the Eagles. I did not have what happened in my mind at all. I mean, it was a drubbing, and you know what? And I'm just going to put this on the record. I know we're months late, but I want to get it on my show. That score doesn't even do justice to how badly the Chiefs were beaten, and it's kind of shameful in my mind. Mahomes came down a peg, not because he was whooped on, because a lot of great players have been whooped on, but he's come down a peg in my mind for throwing, 70-yard bobs over Zion McCollum, like when you shouldn't even be in the game. The Eagles had clearly pulled their starters, and they're trying to score some garbage time buckets just so in a few years, which it will happen in a few years, people will look back. Oh, it was 40-22. It wasn't. Mahomes didn't get blown out. No, Mahomes was beaten like he stole something.
Yeah,
You have a different
absolutely. Oh no, not at all. And I think, to the credit of Philly fans, everybody just remembers, as far as they're concerned, the score was 34-0.
Yes.
So
It
that's
was.
basically what it was. And then, they pull back, they pull the starters, and like you said, Mahomes is throwing, bombs against Tristan McCallum and Sidney Brown. And they don't even have their pass rushers in there. And everybody knows with any type of sanity, how that Super Bowl went. And
Yes.
I think people didn't want to believe it, even at halftime when it was 24-0. It's like, okay, we have seen the Chiefs come back over and over again, but you knew. I even thought after the Cooper DeJean pick six, okay, this is different. They're not going to come back to this because they have taken their soul.
That's what the Cooper DeJean moment was. One of those moments I was like, okay, this is the Zach Bond. It was just too early.
Yeah.
The Zach Bond interception backed up against the goal line. That was one I was like, okay, the Eagles really do have their number, but I'm just like, it's Mahomes, it's a Manning, it's a Brady. You like they could pull a trick out of the hat, but the pick six was just
And the difference there, even if you thought that, or if you had it in the back of your mind, because again, that's probably what you're conditioned to do as a Philly sports fan. That's where the Jalen Hurts part comes in. He sealed that deal. The Chiefs sold out to stop Saquon Barkley. They just, they put all their eggs in one basket. They, put the mortgage up on everybody's house. It's collateral, everything. They sold out to Barkley. And that's where Jalen came in, where he made those plays with his legs. He made those plays with his arm. The touchdown before the half to AJ Brown. And then, the dagger, I believe that was in the third.
Going into halftime when he hit AJ Brown on the crosser.
And then I'm trying to figure out the exact time with the dagger to Devontae Smith.
Oh, that was the third end of the third when he hit
the third quarter.
Post.
So exactly. So, he was going for it. And even the films, you go back to NFL films with all the footage and everything, it confirms how badly they wanted to beat them, because Jalen did not want to leave the game. He wanted to put up a 50 spot at least. Yeah, if you remember, he was asking Sirianni, "Are you sure?" It's almost like I'll give an analogy. It's like, okay, somebody mess with your kid, or somebody, mess with your buddy and everything. Then you bring the dogs out and you beat the crap out of them, and it's like, okay, that's enough. We got him. That's enough. And then it's like, your boys is like, "You sure?" We can take him out.
I got more for him. If you need more, more.
We got much more for him. We said we can end this right now. You won't ever have to worry about it
to me, because the Eagles could have kept going.
They could have
that dagger. We could have been throwing that dagger skinny post. We could have done it a couple times. We thought
they could have easily put a 55, but that also goes back to them having a historic season. And I wrote about it soon after. Not only like Jalen's legacy, but also too, we are looking at one of the best Super Bowl teams ever, Super Bowl winners ever for a single season. And time will tell if they, dynasty, or they win more
early.
But just for them, I wrote off all the stats, but just for them to be the only team in the Super Bowl era to put up 40 points in a championship game and in the Super Bowl. They're the only team to ever do that. And it seemed a bit, okay, that had to happen before, but it hasn't.
And it's amazing, because when I look back at even just 7 years earlier, when the Eagles won that was an amazing offensive explosion. You just take that 2 games of Foles in the NFC Championship against the Vikings and then against the Patriots.
It was.
I didn't think that you would see the Eagles be able to. I mean, but this was because they put the double nickel on the Commanders.
The double nickel, and damn near could have done it against KC if they didn't call the dogs off. But we all
Right.
know that. The Chiefs know that. The Eagles know that. Everybody in the NFL knew that. So
Put up 100, damn near, basically 100 points between the
95
championship game
points.
and the Super Bowl.
That's never been done before. And they put up the most points in a single postseason. I mean, of course, you add maybe an extra round or
Extra game.
going back to when, they changed the formats and all, but
Right.
it was really impressive. But I go back to, Jalen Hurts sealing that deal because it had to fall on his shoulders in the Super Bowl.
And it's not like they dropped 55 in the wild card round, 40 in the divisional round, 20, 22. No, it was the other way. It was as we got closer to the Lombardi, they steamrolled at the end.
They elevated their play, and when it mattered the most.
Absolutely. So the Sixers they're not going to really have a chance at getting Giannis. I mean, there's no package that really works there. I mean, right? That's just trying to level set for Sixers fans. I know people would want to hit the exit anytime they can. And
I don't even think it will work financially anyway. So yeah. So
you would have to get rid of. You're not doing it. It's just bad business. You'd have to get rid of Joel Embiid.
You would just basically have Giannis and nobody else at that point.
And why the hell would Giannis want to do that?
No,
might as well stay in Milwaukee for that.
Yeah, well, he has tunnel vision to either stay in Milwaukee or I'll go to a contender, a legit contender, as what we know as of now.
Yeah, I don't know what the short term fix is in Philly, but Daryl Morey feels confident that next year is going to be. I guess he has to say that he feels confident that the next season.
Yeah, what else is he going to say? I try to be as level headed when I talk about Daryl Morey and just the whole Sixers management and all, but it's just years and years of disappointment. I get it as far as the injuries is concerned. It was really nothing that you could do this year, and they probably did the best course of action to tank without tanking to the point where they actually had to pull Quentin Grimes from a couple of games because he was scoring so much. Well, first of all, they had to find a way to keep him because I think he's too good of a scorer, as we discovered, to where he has to be on this roster and he has to be an integral part. And it just all boils down to, okay, what is the health of Embiid? And I've talked about this past week with others, and you probably have to reimagine who Embiid is and what Embiid is from this point in his career.
That's right.
If he comes back healthy. I mean, do you explore the way then the
Kawhi Leonard?
The Raptors at that time and now currently with the Clippers, even though that hasn't worked out much. Maybe you can blame Harden for that, but I digress.
But Kawhi finished strong. He looked vintage Kawhi by the time when they were losing. Yeah. It was vintage Harden too. That was the problem.
Yeah, that coincides with each other, unfortunately. But do you reimagine Embiid in, let's say, how Kawhi Leonard is managed? I know that's not something everybody wants to hear. So yeah, you play every day, this, that, and the third. I get it. I understand it. Everybody's hard on money. You want to see the best players play, when you go down to South Philly, right?
That's not a choice, though. I mean, the reality is,
and most of that choice is
that's on the table. Yeah,
yeah. But see, most of those choices are made by the team themselves. I mean, there are things that come out with Embiid and everything, and there's things that he could have done, better, how he's handled.
Absolutely.
I hear reports of him being high maintenance, but I fall short of him being lazy and all the out of shape and stuff like that. I mean, this man has had tons of injuries, and there's a point where early in his career, when he sat out those first 2 years, I thought he would never play for the franchise. I thought he would never play pro basketball because, again, my PTSD as a fan, as a Philly native, as a fan, tells me, okay, this is Greg Oden, this is Jeff Ruland, this is Andrew Bynum. So all those things enter into your mind, and you can't help but feel that way as a fan. And and I have to look at it, but looking at it from a journalistic standpoint, you look at the bigger picture. You can be as critical, but how do they reimagine this? And I think that's probably the best course of action.
He's not a guy who's going to play 75, 82 games. Like, that's what I'm saying, is not a choice that's on the table. I know that there's fans in an ideal world who would want to see, everybody wants to see Joel Embiid, his mama, everybody wants to see, 82 game season from him. Is it realistic to think that his body can do that?
His body's probably not going to hold up, right? Especially for a man his size. So you probably have to cap it at maybe 60 games max.
Max. Right. I'm the Kawhi Leonard 55. But if I can get Joel, you might win 40. If I'm saying I'm gonna cap him at 55, with Joel Embiid healthy, you could win 49 of those things.
Yeah, assuming that you have Maxey, assuming that McCain comes back fully healthy. And I do think, actually, if McCain was healthy, they probably would have went to the playoffs. Probably not winning the first round, but McCain really just put the season into the tank where they didn't have no chance. And even when, Maxey might have been playing banged up and all, okay, we're going to shut him down too. So, but it also didn't help that they made those trades at the deadline, because that really doesn't help you short term either. Like when you're in the boat that the Sixers are in, getting a ton of second round draft picks and later years and all. I mean, that's probably even going to be for a new administration. We're looking at that far down the line. So I just think health is a big thing. What are we going to see? When does Embiid come back? How do you manage his health? And you just hope that the rest of the core, rest of the young core, and I haven't even mentioned Paul George.
I didn't want to go there, OJ. I didn't want to do
well, we have to, because that's where the rest of your cap money is, basically. You're you're married to Embiid's extension, you're married to Paul George's contract, and now you're married to Tyrese Maxey now, right? Which I would say out of two of the three is the best investment, correct? So my concern with Paul George is more so not even, okay, the contract itself, is he a good fit with this franchise? That's the question that I'm asking, because
that was the answer. I had an answer to that last summer, and
you did. But they also didn't have much choice with the money that they had to make a move. It was Paul George or who else? Who else was available? This
is where I didn't want us to be, though, because I was like, we're gonna pay him the money, be strapped, and it's still stuck.
Yeah, it was a risk that they were almost forced to take, though.
Yes, because you have to sell tickets. That's the unspoken thing in this conversation.
Yeah,
you can't really sell just Maxey and Embiid to get people in the seats. So it's a business too.
People are going to go anyway, because the Sixers have been. I have to look at, because it kind of fell off a little bit like the last quarter of the season. But Sixers have been at least top 3 in attendance since the 2018 season, 2019. They've been top 3 in attendance. And a year or two, they were number 1, or maybe short of the Chicago Bulls, simply because they had more capacity in their arena. So they've always fluctuated between Chicago, Dallas, and then you had the Sixers. They've always been top 3 this past half decade. So it's not a ticket issue, because Philly fans, they love basketball. They just love going out to the games. I mean, I even went to a couple games as a fan on date nights and stuff, and people were still there. People were still there. But long term, that's probably going to fizzle out if they don't figure out, okay, how can we get this team back to contending?
You can't get it. You can't get off that. I mean, I guess I wanted to say for Paul George, but obviously we arrived at this trade station, so you can't do anything with that contract. We are Paul George is part of this team's future, probably.
Right, short term, at least the next year or two. So, but again, they really didn't have a choice. Were they going to sit on that money? I mean, Daryl Morey would have been, and in fairness, him sitting on that money for, okay, who's available this year in free agency?
Yeah.
Right. So,
you could have had the money though in that case this summer to try to make a stronger push for a Durant, right?
But what is Durant now?
Still have to trade.
Is Durant kind of like your rich man's Paul George or
exactly
your middle class Paul George?
Yeah, middle class. He's not KD. But...
So I mean, what are you getting with KD? It would literally be the same question as you had last year with Paul George. So,
but I'll still get I'll take the quiet 26 a night though. I instead of 16.
But he also has an injury history too. How long is he going to play?
True.
And would it come to another situation where you would have to cap his games?
And how much load are we putting on Maxey these days with this kind of stuff too?
Well, again, that's why
he's going to break down.
That's why I think it's important that McCain comes back healthy. You keep Quentin Grimes here, whatever that may take. I'm kind of on the fence with Kelly Oubre. I think he may have regressed and all, but it's great that it was only a 1-year contract. But I guess that it all depends on who they decide to pick in the draft, and I think that'll go a long way with what they'll do to fill out this roster.
Absolutely.
But it starts and ends with Embiid, and let's Embiid, and we just have to go from there.
So, do you think the Phillies are going to be able to get the Schwarber deal done before he's able to hit the open market?
Well, this is an interesting question because they should, but the Phillies traditionally they don't extend their hitters, their position players in season. They almost never do that. It's almost like something that's a unwritten policy. They almost always let their position players or hitters go to free agency, and then they try to sign them at that point. What they usually do is they'll try to re-up a pitcher or one of their starting pitchers, and they'll re-sign them in season. But it's not something that they've regularly done. I can't even think of the last position player who's not on his rookie contract or not, or as they say in baseball, not still under control. I can't think of the last player who they've really signed in that aspect. I mean, Scott
totally
Kingery or somebody. Right, different MO. And that's also a baseball thing as well. But then you see other teams, they will re-sign players. I believe the Braves are pretty good at locking up their young players for the long term, or locking up maybe even a free. Baseball free agency is tricky because I think they're almost coerced to hit the open market because the open market is what it is. And especially when you have, I don't know who Schwarber's agent is off the back, but anytime you have guys, like your Scott Boras of the world, they'll say, hit the open market and, the highest bidder. Sometimes that can backfire. But I don't think it's going to happen. They should. But I will say this, maybe in a Phillies favor, I believe that Schwarber may be open to take a hometown discount because I do think he really loves it here. I think he really loves his role. And, if he goes somewhere else, they might make him play the outfield or first base or something. But I think
Yeah.
he has a unique role here where he's very comfortable, and I think even more so very happy. But to answer your question, they should sign him, but it's not really a policy that they not policy, so to speak, but it's not really something that they
procedure
do. Yeah, a procedure that they utilize.
Yeah, I think if he hits the open market, you it's out of your control at that point, and that number from a Mets or whoever it could be hard to reach at that point. And honestly, it's surprising probably to the people who've been good enough to us over the last 5 years to listen to us, because I at points over this era, I've ripped Schwarber for the low batting average. But if I had to say, he's probably the centerpiece of this. I mean, of this era of Phillies, it's him or Harper. I might have to tilt it towards Harper won the NL MVP, but Schwarber is just, from beginning to end has just been such a problem for folks.
Well, this first quarter of the season, I mean, Kyle Schwarber is an MVP candidate for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, because he's basically right up there, neck and neck with Aaron Judge for I believe the home run lead. The whole home run lead as we speak. His RBIs are up, and that's simply by him being mostly in the cleanup position.
Judge is not human. Yeah, he came down from another planet. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he has. But for Schwarber this early in the season to go neck and neck with Judge, yeah, exactly. But I think Schwarber's
Hoagie Fest going yet.
yeah, we only had a Hoagie or the Schwarber Fest going. So, and what was that? I guess they had the Schwarber bombs, the drinks as well.
Yeah.
Somebody has to take a hold of the Schwarber bombs though, because you had to put something heavier in those things. So, Schwarber bomb is too good of a name not to have something heavy in it.
Come on.
But anyway, but yeah, he's a legit MVP candidate, and I think I was fine with him being in a leadoff spot because they've won these past 3 years by him being in the leadoff spot. But I thought it turned out to be a great move putting him in his cleanup, because you have he's backing up Harper.
Yep.
You're sitting behind Harper, and Schwarber gets many more opportunities because you see that
RBI.
RBI opportunities. Whether you have Stott at the top and Turner, that's turned out to be a good move too. And I think Stott likes that. And I've been, a heavy critic of Stott.
Yes, I know.
But ever since they've put him in the leadoff spot, I said, okay, maybe he can play this game. And it seems like it's a lot less pressure on him too, which is kind of crazy.
I think the number one thing for Bryson Stott is he really is good at what traditionally you want out of your leadoff guy, is to see a lot of pitches, be able to go back to the dugout and tell people. And he'll force a pitcher. I mean, it's hell, starting against Bryson Stott, because he'll make you go 10, 11, 9, 10, 11 pitches, start off the game, instead of a 12 pitch first inning where you get, maybe Schwarber hits a bomb, but then also he might fly out, instead of having a pitcher who might get out of the first inning in 7 pitches. You're not even done with Stott yet. So it really helps. And Stott needed a better spot in the lineup, because a lot of what you were saying was fitting.
And it was kind of like, perhaps, and again, I'll fall back on it, because he's done a really good job at the leadoff spot. And it's kind of like, maybe he was that sitcom with potential, but he's in a bad time slot.
Yes.
So now he's on a night where you realize, okay, this is a pretty good show, and we'll see how it goes, see how the storylines go, and will it be renewed for a second season?
That's right. but he'll finish the first season, and we'll see how good it is.
Yeah, and I also want to make a point on Johan Rojas. You talk about someone who has been taking a lot of pitches lately, and I think he is coming to fruition as a smarter hitter. He still has a ways to go. But I watched him the other night, and he took a 10-pitch walk. He took 10 pitches and got a walk and jump started a late rally for the Phillies. And I think people have been, yes, has he had miscues and everything, but we also have to remind everyone that he's a young player. I didn't think right off the bat that he has had maybe the best coaching. But these guys, you got to let him play, you got to let him learn. And then early on, when the Phillies were losing and then, flirting with 500 early on April and early May, people were saying, again, as we were talking before the show, Philly fans when something goes wrong, okay, we have to have a suspect, arrest them, put them on trial, a conviction, and sentencing, right? All that was happening to Rojas. But meanwhile, we're turning a blind eye to the rest of the lineup, swinging at, swinging at pitches where you would need a sandwich to hit them, so.
Come on. And nobody's
making mistakes.
That's not Rojas's role on the team. He's not the team savior.
And making mistakes in the field.
Fielder.
Yeah, and making mistakes on the field. Like you're seeing Trey Turner make errors. You're seeing, Bryce Harper booting, stuff at first base. And these are veteran players. And this is where, the imbalance comes, with me as a journalist and say, okay, you got to point these things out. They'll say the Phillies are starting off not living up to expectations, but what are the main causes of that? Why are you blaming solely and specifically Johan Rojas, where he's still learning his game? Yes, the mistakes have to be at a minimum. He's been in the league. Well, he's been in the league long enough, but he's also being platooned as well.
That's right.
So, which I don't think is a good idea. Now I'm out on Marsh, even though he's played pretty well. I think this past week he's played better. But, Rojas has been responsible for a lot of rallies. Rojas, the other night, I forget which game it was, Rojas went 0 for 2 in the game, right? You look at the stats, so he went 0 and 2. But it was with a walk. And he also, I think he had also 2 walks, and he scored 3 runs. That stuff you have to look.
He's getting better. He's fast, and he's getting smarter on the base. There are some times where he does boneheaded stuff on the base paths.
But then again, you have 15-year veterans who are making bonehead plays and who are bad base runners, and they're, not catching the ball or throwing errors. So how do we balance that when we're analyzing a team? Are you
putting all baseball's ahead of him?
Yeah. So you would think so. But, can these guys get better defensively when it comes down to, okay, you need to catch the ball in crunch time, you need to hit behind the runner, or, you need to not swing at pitches that are, 15 feet outside. So, but I think they'll be okay.
Swinging, we weren't talking about you. Swing at everything you want.
Yeah, stuff in, other zip codes. But I think they'll be all right. But again, everyone is basically saying, okay, show me in October. And that's really what they're going to be measured by, what they do in October.
Because they've done everything, but win it
all. But win it all. Yeah, exactly.
So we got to cover this one. We haven't been on since Shedeur, and all I got to say is Shedeur, and people know what I'm talking about. What do you think? There are a lot of pieces to this pie. What is the largest share of this pie? As to people ask, because they know I have a sports podcast and they know I have opinions, so they ask me, what happened with Shedeur? What's your answer to that, OJ? What happened with Shedeur?
I think, first of all, it's people will try to say it's not racism. Oh yeah, Cam Ward was chosen number 1. That's kind of like saying to me, okay, it's not racism because Barack Obama was elected president. Like, racism goes away because Cam Ward was the first pick. We can't be that dense as a people, right? So,
and it's not just one on or it's not an on or off switch. There's subtleties and nuance to racism.
Yeah, It's levels.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So it's racism for one. Number two is it is his father. It's his dad. But I'll say the caveat to that is it's not Prime himself. It's kind of like the fear of Prime.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how we're growing up, old school with parents and everything. It's like, okay, you do this, I'm beat your butt or beat you behind or whatever. To me, when I was growing up, the threat was more scary than the result. So
Mm-hmm.
it's more so the threat of Dion. It's like, okay, oh yeah, I don't want to deal with him and everything. Dion's not going to tell an NFL team how to coach his son. He's
Come
really
on.
not going to do that. I mean, and I think the fact that he has been a coach, and it's also the flamboyancy. These,
Mm-hmm.
our society has still not. Well, I ain't gonna say society. Well, society to a certain point, and these are things that I'm
Large.
studying. Yeah, that I'm studying in school now. Um, Society is large, primarily white America. They are still uncomfortable with confident black people. In this case, confident black men.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for some reason, you always have to be humbled. Okay,
Play a role. Know
play
your
play
role.
play your role. Okay, this is a privilege. So being that it is a privilege, well, if it is a privilege, why are you paying them to do it? But I digress.
Right.
But if it is a privilege, okay, you have to be humble, be seen and not heard, all of
Mm-hmm.
those things. But you had to know that. I mean, this is his father,
That's right.
Dion. We forget. We also forget the contributions that Deion Sanders has made to the NFL. For one,
Right.
I mean, he made. Can you imagine if social media was around when prime time in his prime?
Oh my gosh.
The too legit to quit era in the NFL, with Hammer and all them being on the sidelines, and every the days when
And true
Atlanta was
story
truly,
professionally.
yeah, the
You
days when
mentioned
Atlanta
a
was
mogul. He could have
right.
been.
Right. The days where Atlanta was truly Black Hollywood.
Yeah.
So that's Dion's era, man. So, but
Yeah.
you had to know that, as confident and maybe even cocky as Dion is, that, his children are not going to have that same confidence. And I'll go one step further. We always want, when quote unquote black kids or black athletes get out of hand, what do we say? Where's the father? Where's his
Mhm.
parents? What kind of home did he grow up in? His father's ever presence. But then, oh yeah, we don't want that. Okay, oh yes, his father's
Mhm.
in the home, his father is prominent in his life. We don't want that,
Mhm.
because it goes back to, okay, Richard Williams with his girls, right? um
Mhm.
you know, Everybody want to ask, okay, where's the father? There's not enough black fathers in the home. But when the black father speaks up and speaks out and publicly advocates for his children, then he's overstepping. He's a problem,
Yep.
And so what if they wanted to dictate where they want to go? Okay, did we soon
We
forget
have
John Elway?
Alex.
Did we
Right.
forget the
Eli
Manning
Manning, who
family?
wasn't good.
Yeah, and best believe when Arch comes out in the next year or two, you
Same thing,
damn
right?
sure know that they're going to dictate where he goes.
Come on.
Same way Eli did not want to go to San Diego at the time.
That's right.
Same
Chargers.
way where Peyton Manning literally threatened the Colts if they didn't pick him. He literally threatened them
Mm. Mm.
if they didn't pick him. John Elway didn't want to go to the Colts, and I think something came out the other day because Boomer Esiason has spoke out about Shedeur as well, and I think when he was coming out of Maryland, I think he was trying to dictate where he went because I think the
Oh,
Colts were
Boomer
interested
did.
in him.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So yeah. So
This isn't
again,
new.
nothing is new, but it depends on who does it.
That's right.
It almost goes back to what my elders used to tell me, before, so you won't get caught up in the system and everything. You can't do what white folks do.
It's true.
And this is an example. How dare a young black player? And then there's things coming out with Caleb Williams and his father being prominent in his life, as far as, okay, he didn't necessarily want him to go to the Bears. So because as it's coming out, the Bears organization was in turmoil. I mean, they pretty much they drafted him and didn't even have anybody to mentor him as far as watching film and all of those things. That's malpractice. And the same management, the same regime is still there in Chicago. You could change coaches all you want, but okay, what is being dictated from the bottom, from the top to the bottom? But this is nothing new. I mean, I don't even know how good of a player Shedeur is going to be, but he deserves the benefit of the doubt.
I know. I think everybody who's listening to this and who's not listening to this can agree, if they actually have watched football, Shedeur Sanders, as far as talent goes, was not a 5th round pick. And he wasn't
not a 5th round pick. I mean, I would have even settled for him being second round.
I'd be like, y'all were with it. Y'all messed up, and because Jalen Hurts was a 2nd round pick. So, okay, y'all got it wrong. Y'all labeled it. Okay, 3rd round I could have got. Sliding to the 5th was retribution in my eyes.
Oh yeah, it was literally personal, and it's ridiculous. And these anonymous GMs, these anonymous executives and everything, say it with your chest, man. Say it with your chest. You're not going to get fired.
Come on. And you don't want it on record for in 3 or 4 years when possibly Shedeur, because what he went through here, I'll be honest, I don't think that he's going to end up being the Cleveland Browns starting quarterback. I'm not even sure he will end up on the Cleveland Browns. He will end up on an active NFL roster this year.
The fact that Cleveland has their own disaster, their fiasco, having 5-6 quarterbacks who could probably compete for starting jobs around the league. It's like, it's nuts. And knowing that, I know Watson is hurt, and say what you want about him and all, but to have all those guys on the roster, that's just another thing.
Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, you pick in the 3rd, Shedeur. I don't know how you split up the reps. I don't know how you decide who you're going to go with.
There's no way you can. They have to trade at least 2 of those guys. And who is it going to be? But the league is marketing Shedeur as if he's going to compete for a starting job. That's another thing that I pay attention to. But it's a crazy situation, and he did not deserve that. He did not. And to say that racism wasn't a part of it, or to say that retribution wasn't a part of it, people are just being insular and naive.
And just I think flat out intellectually dishonest. I don't think anybody who paid any attention, and I'm not even the closest watcher of college football last season or any season. I watched more college football last season than mostly I have. The truth is, you knew when Shedeur Sanders was on television. You knew when Colorado was on television, and he played well. He was getting sacked left and right, slammed, hurried, pressured, making 4th quarter comebacks. Yeah, he had a great wide receiver on the outside, but so do a lot of these teams. People were all excited about Carson Beck from Texas. That guy is not good.
Let's keep it a buck here, Matt. Most quarterbacks are overdrafted. Most of them.
Yes.
Most of them are all overdrafted. And let me see. Think of your most random quarterback.
Carson Beck's from Georgia. My apologies.
Yeah. Think of your last mediocre quarterback last 25 years. For every Jamarcus Russell, there are like 100.
Sam Bradford.
Yeah. So
number 1.
Yeah. So again, I mean, this Eagles regime, I mean, it was Chip Kelly, by the way. I mean, they really tried to sell us that Sam Bradford would be
elite
quarterback in this league.
Because they traded Nick after he had the 27-2 season for Bradford.
Yeah, Sam Bradford, Mr. Short of the Sticks. So,
always.
But I mean, we overvalue most quarterbacks, and most of them happen to be white. But it's all about opportunity. It's all about who drafts you. What is your situation? And that goes back to Hurts. Hurts was in a perfect situation where he could take the reins and run with it. And the Eagles were lucky, so to speak.
They were
with that. But then again, you go back to Jeffrey Lurie. He's really like the what do you call
the godfather of the black quarterback.
Well, yeah, and those aspects too. But Jalen Hurts became his Moby Dick because he's really Russell Wilson. What he wanted to pick Russell Wilson, but only 10 years later, nearly 10 years later. So, and we see how that's turned out. But going back to originally to Shedeur, it's just like you said, intellectually dishonest and irresponsible.
It is. So to the Eagles, they seem at least comfortable on paper penciling in Tyler Steen at right guard to replace Mekhi Becton. You get to see him up close. I've liked what I've seen from Steen. I saw him in person at the Commanders game. I've been to camp a couple times. I liked what I saw. Obviously, there were some things he needed to improve on. Do you think that's going to be the move, or it's going to be Kenyon Johnson, or an outside move? Is Steen ready?
Well, I think this year he has to be. If he wants to be a starting guard in this league, if he wants to be a productive player in this league, he has to, because they kind of gave him a bit of more of a red shirt, almost like a red shirt year. Because again, they had to bring in Mekhi Becton. It's almost like a carbon copy of last off season by them bringing in Kenyon Green. He's insurance for Tyler Steen, but I do think that it's Steen's job to lose. But I think just being around the guys for another year or so, hopefully he's learned a lot. And he hasn't been bad when he was called to duty. But those are big shoes to fill. Even with Becton being here just 1 year, those are big shoes to fill. It's a close group. I think they'll do everything they can to make sure that he's successful. But he has to. This is his time to shine. He has to produce this year, because they brought in Kenyon Green as insurance. You kind of maybe don't want to see Kenyon Green.
Right.
Given his production or lack thereof in this league. So I do think, it's Steen's job to lose, but he really has to step up and take ownership of this position, because it is going to fall on him, and they're going to give him every opportunity to win the job.
And I mean, it really, you said it right. If he can't play right guard in Philly, being buffered by Juergens and Lane Johnson, it really puts horrible film on tape if you're getting blown up, missing assignments, not able to succeed. Because it just, over the years, we're talking about a decade here of just great offensive line play from the Eagles. So other teams will look at him and be like, if you can't survive here, you can't play. And so I totally agree with you.
I think
he's playing for his career. Yeah. Understout. Yes. That goes without saying, but it's important to say.
It's a high standard, though. Don't get me wrong. It is a high standard. And, you just can't plug anybody in there. But like you said, there's no better opportunity or probably better coaching staff to be under to be a quality NFL offensive lineman than under Stowling University.
Absolutely. Cowboys went and got George Pickens from Pittsburgh to give another threat on the outside. I guess CD does a lot of work in the slot, so they really are, I think, most likely going to be seeing George Pickens as a threat on the outside.
Right.
But they didn't. They still have not addressed the running back room. Potentially, Miles Sanders is in line for heavy carries. Jaden Blue, a cast of other folks who a lot of the people listening to this show never heard of or haven't seen them carry the ball much. Are they definitely going to be better than the Giants? And I definitely don't think they're going to be better than the Commanders, but are they definitely going to be better than the Giants?
Yeah, I would think so because you have a healthy Dak. Say what you want about Dak. He'll,
Right.
he puts up numbers. He puts up points on the board. But, it is a big question mark as far as what they'll do at running back. And then, George Pickens, he has, a little bit of baggage himself. If you're a Dallas fan, you hope that, there won't be any scuffles on the field or in a locker room amongst teammates and all. But again, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to have a potent offense where you don't necessarily know where they've basically devalued the running back position. And, I get it in a sense because it's what the NFL does for the most part. But, you have to have guys who are going to carry the ball in crucial situations and be productive. So I think, it's probably a move that it's probably a bit of an overreach to go out and get Pickens. Will he improve the receiving core because you didn't have much as it is after Lamb?
Right.
But my bigger if you're a Dallas fan, your bigger concern not only running back but offensive line.
That's what I'm about to say.
That's even
this
big
is
concern,
a terrible
no
recipe for Dak to throw 25 picks next season. And he's he's judicious.
Or to stay healthy. You go and you look at the depth chart and you look at that offensive line. I think they did draft somebody, but you look at that offensive line as it is now. I mean, how can you feel confident that Dak will last another season?
They're going to be throwing quick screens to Pickens and Lamb all season. That's,
well, that kind of stuff.
Not going to be giving Dak the time.
That'll play right into Vic Fangio's hands. I would think. It's not going to take much to be better than the Giants because the Giants have, another crazy quarterback room with Wilson, Dart, and now Jameis Winston.
It's a better quarterback room, though. It has improved significantly.
It's a better quarterback room, but it's a mediocre room.
Yeah.
And we don't know, okay, did they draft Dart because they say, okay, we're out on, getting the next Manning, getting Arch? Are they out on that? Do they believe that much? How much do they believe in Dart to where, okay, is he really going to be our quarterback of the future? People are throwing out there. This is the funniest thing because you say, a couple of years ago, who would even thought, like the experts say, who's going to be the next Jalen Hurts? They're comparing. Dart is comparing himself to Jalen Hurts, and indirectly. But how much do they believe in him to be the quarterback of the future? Because they're going to be figuring things out. Who's going to start, whether it be Russ, whether it be Jameis, and then does Dart just sit a year to just watch? Which probably that looks like that's going to be the case.
You pay the money for Wilson and Winston. It's built for him to get some time to learn how to be a pro. Yeah. It would be silly to just throw him out there with those and have Wilson and Winston holding a clipboard.
Yeah,
but it's the Giants.
Yeah, and those moves, it's like, okay, well, why did you keep Dable? Because literally, that's not going to be if the Giants do another. What were they last year? Were they
4-13, something like that?
4-13. If they have another 4-13 or a 5-12 record, I mean, what was the use of keeping Dable? Not necessarily his fault, so to speak. But
they were 3-14. I gave them one extra win.
Oh, geez.
Unfair.
So even if you become 5-13, 4-13, and 5-12, and you're not even going to, does he survive another season knowing that you have, Dart, potentially redshirting? Like, I don't understand that logic, right? So, but that's why I don't understand what people are out of sorts where, oh yeah, you played the Giants twice in 2 weeks. Even with the Commanders, as far as the schedule is concerned, because I have my other thoughts on that. But yeah, going back to the original question, Cowboys I think they'll be better than the Giants, but what is that saying?
Right.
That, they won't be ahead of the Commanders, who I expect to maybe not be as good, but maybe be consistent, competing with the Eagles for the division title. Now that we have an idea what the rosters are going to look like, we have the schedule now. And here's the thing too that I want to make a point of, and this is just the schedule all along. Fans are worried about, the Eagles having a, tough schedule. Giants had the toughest schedule, by the way, out of every team. But yeah, the schedule is difficult for the Eagles. But the one thing that I want to make a point of is, for the last 30 years or so, and this is every year, this is not even skipping a year, Matt, there's always been 4 new playoff teams in the NFL in the postseason. There's always been at least 4,
right?
No less, at least 4. So, okay, yes, the schedule is hard, but chances are
who last year's playoff teams are.
Chances are the 10 playoff teams that the Eagles will be playing, chances are that at least a couple of those or a few of those won't be playoff teams this year. They may still have,
like one of those is
records.
The Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have had the Eagles number, but are the Buccaneers a juggernaut? No.
Yeah. Okay. How will Washington handle this success of being this? So I still hear Commanders fans, oh, we were this close and everything, as if, like you said, the Eagles put a double nickel on them. You're not that close. You get a double nickel in a championship game, but not as close as you think you are. But that's progress for them. Good for them. But yeah, I mean, that's where the parity comes into play, and the NFL really feeds off of that, because again, chances are the playoff teams that we saw last year, I mean, I think the Bengals was a perfect example of on the Eagles schedule last year. Everybody thought that Bengals game was going to be, that's going to be tough. When I said Joe Burrow this, Joe Burrow that, and
in Cincinnati.
Yeah, in Cincinnati, and they crushed them.
Yep. And it was a turning point game for the Eagles in a good way.
Yeah. So, we can say, oh yeah, this team is going to be this, or this schedule is tough, or this part of the season is going to be tough, but we never know, because again, the NFL tells us every year that there's going to be at least 4 new playoff teams. So the thing that Eagles fans, I think, just have to worry about is, number 1, staying healthy, and number 2, and I don't think this is going to happen, the latter is, don't get caught up in the Super Bowl hangover.
That's right.
But I think they still have
right captain of the ship.
Yeah, they still have the right captain of the ship. They still have a great veteran presence to where that's not going to happen. I mean, case in point, I sat in on one of Lane Johnson's interviews the day before they left for the Super Bowl. And, you see everything that came out with their pregame, their night before speeches and all for the Super Bowl. Lane Johnson, even that week before the Super Bowl, he was just as focused as humanly possible. I mean, he didn't say it all verbatim, but you saw his presence, you saw his attitude. And I remember him saying that, oh gosh, what did he say? He was like, trash talk doesn't win games, execution does, all those things. And he was just laser focused, like the 12, 13-year veteran that he is, right? And as long as you still have guys like that in the locker room, and then you have guys who have elevated into leadership positions.
That's right.
Of course, Jalen, Jordan Davis, AJ Brown.
Absolutely. Brown.
Saquon. Devontae Smith, Saquon. Now, I guess we have another show about Saquon. Right?
Yeah. We'll do that enough.
But
and if people know me, they know I want to do it, but they know this will be a 3-hour show.
Well, but I think they still have that core of leadership where they're not going to allow the Super Bowl hangover to, cloud over them this season. But I just think the main thing for them is just being health. I don't think you have to worry about Nick Sirianni writing a book in the off season. What do we say about Sirianni now? By the way,
Sirianni is the greatest coach in Eagles history
over Andy Reid, over his overall tenure.
We play for one goal.
Damn right. There's one goal. And I
appreciate getting close to the goal. Had Nick not gotten to 2, because Andy got us to 1. It gotten us to 1. Vermeil got us to 1.
They got us to 2 and got it done.
And won 1 and beat the hell out of the people too. I mean, that counts. That's extra credit.
Like how do we even diagnose Nick Sirianni as a coach? Because he's not a great X and O's guy, but he has this incredible knack for getting his guys to play for him and relate. So, one of my a lady fan has said to me. She has said that I think it helps that Nick Sirianni is a millennial and he's able to relate to his players. And I said, you know what? You probably make a good point.
Yep.
And, it may be a cultural thing as well, but whatever his method is, he gets those guys to play from him on game day. And I think people are kind of reluctant or maybe afraid to say that he's a great head coach. And given that everything that went down last year, as far as, what do you do here and all that from Tim McManus, who's a good guy, by the way. So, but
I get it. Yeah.
What does he do here? I mean, he's a great leader of men. That's what I say.
I win 75% of my damn football games. That's what I do. That's like, that's
probably what he should have said last year. Yeah. And he could pull shots out. I'm a damn good football coach, and I plan to be better.
It's not my job to tell y'all what I do. What y'all go out there and y'all see Eagles.
I let my record speak for itself. Yeah.
Right.
So
that's what I do.
And I'm well, maybe Glory and Howie maybe told him to tone it down a bit, but I thought he was gonna go ham during the parade, man. And he should have. I'm kind of disappointed that he didn't.
Me too.
Because I kind of wanted him to say F you.
Yes. And I've been on this show, I got to cop to it. I have been questioning of him at moments. I was not on the fire Sirianni, but the fire Sirianni was just too much.
What did I say before about article, right? Everybody saying he wants to be fired. He behaves exactly like the fans who want him fired.
Exactly. Absolutely.
It's a carbon copy. He is who they see in the mirror, but don't want to admit.
Exactly.
And I think it's the most hilarious thing.
So what would you give the draft haul that the Eagles were able to bring in April?
I think a solid B. Solid B, maybe a B plus. But I think a solid B. Only because, and I'll just talk primarily about the first 2 draft picks, Campbell
Makuba
and Makuba.
Yep.
So I think you have a potential blue chipper in Campbell. And the only question mark is his health. Okay, where are they
Right.
keeping back? But then again, you have to give the Eagles credit because who was the last player that they drafted that we talked about potentially his health? Landon Dickerson, right?
Yeah.
Dickerson's an all-pro.
That's true.
He's an all-pro guard now, Pro Bowl or all-pro, and or all-pro, I believe. So
All-pro.
yeah, and what do we talk about? Oh yeah, we got him in second round, and it was value. And it's like, oh yeah, well, he has a bad back, or this, that, and the other. That's that doesn't even come up anymore. That's probably not even his bio anymore.
That's
Big
true.
country,
I didn't even remember
as
that
Jalen
Landon
calls
was a
him.
big. Yeah, that was a big injury bug there.
Right. It was like, okay, but the experts or people that I trust said, okay, if he is healthy, he's going to be a beast. And sure enough, and you see what him and Cam did in the championship game and the Super Bowl. I mean, just those guys barely being able to walk at that NFC championship game. Like, I saw them labor and walk into the locker room, especially like being on cleats too. So I can imagine how painful that was. But anyway,
you could see Cam on the sideline in between pancaking dudes, like stretching his back.
Yeah, exactly. But going back to Campbell, I think he could be a blue chipper, and I think Makuba, he reminds me a lot of CJ. So if you're going to replace CJ,
much faster.
That was my concern. He's smaller though.
Yes,
I mean CJ's not all that big, but he's strong.
He put a lot of that on though since the first coming because he was a slot corner in New Orleans.
True, but the thing about CJ, and I see a lot of similarities in Makuba. He takes the ball away, so you just hope that Makuba can take the ball away. And can he come in and start? Because I don't trust Sidney Brown being your starting safety.
No, I don't either.
I need to see his coverage skills, and that
he's too aggressive,
and that he won't go all out and hurt himself.
he's a big nickel guy.
What a play!
Yeah,
that
he's like a third safety. You bring a third safety on the field to be in the box, or
he's not always
he's
not always throwing people out the club on every play. That's my worry.
I think Makuba is going to be a star. He's somebody who popped to me just watching college football this season at Texas.
Yeah,
really good player.
I
wonder,
like CJ, like you said, only faster
but smaller. But I trust the Eagles, and I also want to shout out Ty Robinson. He's going to be a beast out of Nebraska, the defensive tackle.
Yeah, I think that was a good pick, getting that depth on the defensive line, which I think they need. I think that's a good replacement as guys like you lose Milton Williams, and then you have a Jumo who kind of elevates, I believe, on the depth chart.
Absolutely.
And also I think he can have a breakout year, and maybe because I think Ajomo would be a good replacement for Milton Williams, but you do have Robinson in the cut, where I think he may be able to contribute as well.
Yeah, another great Eagles. Late round. I think Ajomo was, what round was he picked?
He was like 5th or 6th, right?
Yeah, he was late. Let's see when he was picked. Yeah, we'll have to fact check that later. But Moro Jomo is another. I mean, the fact that we're talking
late round, I think we say late round pick. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And then he's going to be getting significant time last year. They're doing good work down there at the NovaCare. Before we let the people go, of course, we're still in the NBA playoffs. The Eastern Conference Finals will start this week as we're recording this. The Pacers are underdogs in the betting market. Do you think that they have any real shot of extending this to 6, 7, or even winning this series?
I think they have a shot to win.
They have a shot to
couple
win.
couple factors. I think people are already underestimating the Pacers. They beat them before. I think they would have beat the Knicks last year, even had Brunson not get injured. The thing that I think people should worry about the Indiana Pacers, and I'm not taking anything from the Knicks because they certainly deserved it. I think by them, the Karl Anthony Towns acquisition, I think, has paid dividends for them and may even get them over the hump. We'll see if that happens. Yes, I give the edge to the Knicks, but I think what people have to remember about Indiana is they keep coming. They can shoot. They're still relatively young. And they're athletic. They're deep. They're athletic. And they play good team defense.
They do.
It may not seem like it, or the stats may not show, but if you watch them, I mean, they really had their way with Cleveland, and Cleveland turned out not to be ready because I think simply because of Indiana's experience. Indiana is just as experienced, if not more, than the Knicks.
Yeah.
The Knicks may have better overall talent or maybe the better overall grit, but the Knicks cannot take this for granted. It's like, I know they're probably looking at this as a revenge series, but people talking about, Knicks in 6-7. Indiana could win this series.
I agree with you. I don't know. My main thing when I'm watching the series, and I'm glad you said what you did because and for the folks, we haven't had a chance to really get into this, so I'm glad to do it live for the people. Is I'm wondering, they're probably going to have to slide Anunoby over to, because there's no way in hell you're having Brunson trying to guard Tyrese Halliburton. You could try to do Hart. There's just so many problems, and you're going to move in.
Yeah, they present matchup problems, and it's probably the same way with the Knicks as well, offensively. But yeah, the Knicks are really going to have to play elite defense on elite perimeter defense.
If Cat is going to play the way he played in the last series, you could see a Knicks in 6. I don't know who's gonna. Yeah. I don't know.
And then we didn't even mention Siakam.
Yeah, I just don't know if Cat. I just don't know if Siakam can guard Cat. If Cat's going to play strong the way he played in the last couple series,
right? But they also have the size and the length with Turner and those guys, and who's the other kid I'm thinking about. But yeah, they're deep and they keep coming. They're well conditioned. So yeah, I don't think this is going to be a cakewalk for the Knicks. The Knicks had to prove that they can beat Indiana.
Oof. Okay.
We're missing that. We're missing that part of it because everybody's forgetting last year and just saying, "Oh yeah, this is revenge." The Knicks really lost games against Indiana that they should have won.
It's true.
Before Brunson even got hurt.
So in the West, before we go and do our salutations, who are you giving the edge? The Wolves are obviously relaxing right now. The winner of the series between Denver and Oklahoma City, or are you going to take the Wolves?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a toss-up. I'll say this. I think we can. I won't say. I think we can. I expect OKC to advance and play Minnesota, but I think it's a toss-up. But I think the pressure will be more so on Minnesota and Anthony Edwards, more so than OKC, because in my opinion, OKC is still elevating, and I think they can be good for quite a while, as well as Minnesota. But you look at the other side of that Karl Anthony Towns trade. I think both teams won that trade. It's what Julius Randle brings to Minnesota. What you're going to get with Anthony Edwards, of course, Mike Conley, the ageless wonder. And I think the key, for always is for Minnesota is Rudy Gobert. How well is he going to play? How well is he going to guard guys? I think that'll be an interesting matchup with him and Chet Holmgren. And again, what does Minnesota do with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who I think will win the MVP? So I think it's going to be an interesting matchup, and I think that could easily go 7 because I really don't know right off the bat who's going to win that series because it could. I would guess the betting lines are right there, 50-50. The money lines are right there, where there's no clear favorite. Where on the other side, I think most of the money would go to the Knicks.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. It has been a very interesting NBA playoffs. OJ, it's always great to have you on. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. We still didn't cover today. We didn't get to get into Luka. We didn't get to get into Saquon Barkley and places that he went or didn't go. Of course, we'll keep you updated on the Philadelphia Eagles and the Sixers, figuring out what the hell they're going to do. But thank you so much for listening. And OJ, it's always great to have you on, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
And a fly ball, deep right field. The game is tied. Kyle Schwarber launches a solo home run, his 15th of the year. Six game.
Well,